If you ask a modern general who the deadliest soldiers in history are, they won't say the Spartans. They won't say the Vikings. They will point to a group of cheerful, 5'3" men from the mountains of Nepal who carry a curved farming knife. They are the Gurkhas. And their villain arc actually starts with them completely humiliating the biggest empire on the planet. Back in 1814, the British Empire was basically the final boss of the world. They had the best guns, infinite money, and owned half the globe. So when they looked at the tiny, independent kingdom of Nepal, they essentially thought, free real estate. They marched their massive army into the Himalayas expecting an easy weekend camping trip. But instead, they stumbled into a literal meat grinder. The British brought state-of-the-art muskets and rigid battle formations. The Nepalese brought the kukri. This isn't just a knife. It's a heavy, forward-curving blade that essentially turns human limbs into an unboxing video. The British troops were getting absolutely dismantled. You can have all the fancy guns in the world, but it doesn't matter when a Gurkha drops from a tree, deflects your bayonet, and suddenly you are missing half your torso. For 2 whole years, the British threw endless money and bodies into the mountains, getting completely embarrassed by guys in sandals. The losses were so catastrophic that the British commander finally looked at the butcher's bill and made a decision that would change global military history forever. He didn't order a retreat, and he didn't order a bigger attack. Instead, he walked right up to the men who were actively slaughtering his army, raised a white flag, and asked them a completely insane question. Do you guys want a job? Yes. The British Empire, after getting absolutely clapped in the mountains, literally offered the surviving Gurkhas an employment contract. If you can't beat them, pay them. And just like that, the British unlocked the ultimate military cheat code. Fast forward to the World Wars. I'm going to speed run this because we have a lot of ground to cover. The British took these mountain warriors and deployed them into every hellscape imaginable. The muddy trenches of France? Sure. The blistering deserts of North Africa? Why not? The suffocating jungles of Burma? Light work. Imagine being an Axis soldier in World War II, expecting a standard, polite firefight. Instead, the bushes start speaking Nepali, and suddenly you're in a melee brawl with guys who treat global warfare like a casual side quest. But the real terror wasn't just their aim. It was the weapon we talked about earlier. You see, the Gurkhas have a terrifying, deeply ingrained rule regarding the kukri. Once the blade is unsheathed, it must taste blood before it goes back in the scabbard. If they draw it and the enemy runs away, they literally have to nick their own finger to satisfy the blade's thirst before putting it away. This isn't some Hollywood myth. This is a religious-level commitment to absolute violence. Because of this, the Gurkhas racked up a battlefield reputation that made it look like they were using aimbots. They were so feared that enemy propaganda leaflets literally begged their own soldiers not to fight them. But look, it's easy to say they were great fighters on a macro scale. It sounds like exaggerated history. So, to prove it wasn't just hype, we need to zoom in on a single trench in 1945. Because what one 4'11" Gurkha did with a blown-off arm and a literal pile of grenades is going to sound completely made up. Look, drop the memes and the gaming jokes for a second. We need to talk about Burma. May 1945. It is pitch black. The jungle is suffocatingly hot, and sitting in a tiny, muddy foxhole at the very front of the British defensive line is a 4'11" Gurkha named Lakhiman Gurung. He's stationed there with just 2 other men, and in the dark, they hear the brush moving. It's not a patrol. It's over 200 Japanese soldiers, and they know exactly where Lakhiman's trench is. Suddenly, the tree line erupts. A live grenade lands right in the mud at Lachemann's feet. He doesn't panic. He reaches down, picks it up, and hurls it back. Boom. A second grenade drops into the trench. Again, no hesitation. He grabs it, throws it back. Boom. Then a third grenade lands just inches from him. He reaches out, his fingers wrapping around the metal casing. But this time, he's out of time. The grenade detonates perfectly in his right hand. The blast instantly blows off his fingers, shatters his right arm, and sends shrapnel ripping through his face, right arm, and right leg. The two men next to him are badly wounded and completely out of the fight. Lachemann is bleeding out, half-blinded and alone. Now, a normal human goes into shock and dies, but Lachemann isn't a normal human. He is a Gurkha. Using his intact left hand, he drags his bolt-action rifle into position. For the next 4 hours, wave after wave of Japanese soldiers rush his trench, thinking it's completely defenseless. With one arm bleeding into the mud, Lachemann chambers round after round, firing directly into the dark. He literally screams at them over the gunfire. "Come and fight a Gurkha!" When the sun finally comes up and reinforcements arrive, they find Lachemann still alive, sitting in the ruined trench. Around his position are 31 dead enemy soldiers. He held the line entirely by himself. He survives, gets the Victoria Cross, and later in life complains that the only thing bothering him is that he had to learn to write with his left hand. So the obvious question is, how on earth do you build a human being capable of doing that? What kind of insane factory produces a mind that simply refuses to die? So how do you build a human being like Lachemann? Short answer, you don't build them. You filter them. The modern British Army selection process in Nepal is essentially a real-life battle royale, just without the shrinking circle and the colorful tracksuits. Every year, over 10,000 young Nepalese men apply for roughly 200 available spots. Let me put that math into perspective for you. It is statistically much harder to get selected as a Gurkha than it is to get accepted into Harvard University. Harvard asks for a well-written essay and extracurriculars. The British Army asks if your body can literally defy gravity. The final boss of this entire selection process is the infamous Doko race. The recruits are given a traditional Doko basket filled with exactly 25 kilograms, or 55 pounds, of sand and rocks. But here is the absolute worst part. There are no shoulder straps. The entire weight of the basket is supported by a single strap resting directly across their forehead. With 55 pounds hanging entirely off their neck muscles, these guys have to run 5 kilometers straight up an impossibly steep Himalayan mountain trail. And they have to finish in under 46 minutes. I don't know about you, but my heart rate spikes carrying a 12-pack of soda up a single flight of stairs. Meanwhile, these 18-year-olds are treating a grueling, neck-breaking mountain ascent like a casual morning jog. It is the ultimate physical stat check. If you survive the Doko race, pass the selection, and spend the next 20 years of your life being the most feared door kicker in major global conflicts, what happens when you finally retire? You would logically expect men with this kind of violent resume to become high-paid international mercenaries, private military contractors, or Hollywood stuntmen, right? Well, you would be wrong. Because what the world's deadliest soldiers do when they hang up their kukris is honestly the biggest plot twist of all. You'd logically expect men with this kind of terrifying resume to become high-paid international mercenaries, private military contractor, or maybe the next John Wick. But that's the biggest plot twist of all. When the world's deadliest soldiers finally hang up their kukris, they just go home. Despite being literal gods of war, Gurkha culture is deeply rooted in extreme humility. politeness, and community. When their service ends, most of them pack their bags, leave the high-tech military bases behind, and return to their remote villages in the Himalayas. Men who single-handedly held off entire enemy platoons with a bolt-action rifle and a missing arm spend their retirement farming terraced hillsides, sipping tea, and using their military pensions to build local schools. It is the ultimate irony. The fiercest warriors in modern history aren't bloodthirsty warmongers. They're just incredibly cheerful guys from the mountains who will happily offer you a cup of tea, right up until the exact moment you threaten their friends. Then, the knife comes out. And that is the legacy of the Gurkhas. But history is absolutely packed with these legendary, overpowered military factions. If the Gurkhas are the undisputed kings of modern infantry, who takes the crown for the deadliest warriors of the ancient world? Drop your top pick down in the comments so I know who to cover next. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.